Hello. Yes, it is me, Mrs. Lovett. Oh, my hair? Oh, there's this new barber in town, and let me tell... What? Yes, I run the bake shop. Yes, Johnny, it is failing, but that's why I'm here, teaching buggers like you this information. Now can we move on with it? Great. So, does everyone have the books? No one has the books. What kind of bloody class is it if no one bloody has their bloody books? Whatever. Well, if you wandered in here by accident, just to let you know, this is sexual education class by yours truly, Mrs. Lovett. This might be a longer class today, it might be shorter, depends on what you buggers bother me with. But let me open my book here. Now, during this class today, we're going to be going over diseases. We're going to be going over treatments for these diseases and many other things. And next week there will be we're going to separate up the boys and the girls, and we're going to have one of those classes, yes. But for today we are focusing on diseases. What's your rush? What's your hurry? You sit back down. You sit back down. We are not done here. We're not done. Sit. Sit you down. Thank you. Now, seeing as how no one has remembered their books, I guess it's up to me to read to you, y'all. Isn't that right? You all want me to read? Well, I guess if you want to pass this class at all. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it again, and we don't want that now, do we? Okay, so, well, let's begin. If my hair wasn't in my face. Okay, so you might want to take notes, and, in case you, do have your book at home, just so you know, this book is, you all should have it, or your parents should, because it's the New Warren's Household Physician, enlarged and revised, being a brief description in plain language of all the diseases of men, women, and children, with the latest and most approved methods of treatment. Now it's by A.I. Bradley and Company, and yeah, so in this version of the book, the 1900 version, this starts on page 360. So write that down so that when you go out, you can study. So, let's begin. Venereal or sexual diseases. Of all the diseases to which flesh is heir, none bring so much misery, moral and physical, as those called sexual or venereal. To the physician, they are the source of the greatest anxiety and perplexity. They bring him into possession of the most delicate secrets, secrets which involve the peace of families and neighborhoods, secrets which his honor as a man, his truth as a physician, compel him to lock fast in his own breast and hold sacredly apart even from his nearest companions. Secrets which, if revealed, would fill domestic circles with unutterable bitterness and heart-burnings, and whole neighborhoods with scandal and immorality. Hey, Johnny, I may not be able to pronounce it, but at least I'm more educated than you. Bloody bugger. Where was I? You made me lose my spot. Anyway, these secrets are often a burden to him. They are on his breast like undigested food in the stomach, disturbing the whole nature. The patient, if a man of sensibility, suffers even more, of course, than his physician. In many cases, he is a man of virtuous intentions and perhaps of religious habits, who has fallen in a moment of temptation. and he fears that the effect of his sin will spread itself through his whole system and extend to the end of life, or still worse, that having poisoned the fountain of his life, it will go down as a heritage of misery to his offspring, or what he would deprecate as almost equally calamitous, that the partner of his bosom may become the innocent partaker of his disease. Yes, that's right. You can pass these to other people. It's like the plague, really. Oh, bloody carriages. Anyway, in this state of apprehension, he turns to the physician, not merely to keep his secret, but to cure his disease. How great a pity that, in such circumstances, he does not always fly immediately to an honourable physician, instead of seeking the advice, as many do, of those miserable quacks, who lure him to their dens only to get his money, having no intention or ability to cure his complaint. These diseases are divided into two great branches, characterized in part by different symptoms, and generally held to be entirely different complaints. The first to come under consideration is pox, or, as you probably all know it, syphilis. This disease had a very early origin. It was known among the Jews, as we learn very clearly from the 15th chapter of Leviticus. Dr. Adam Clarke's commentary upon this chapter, at least, makes it apparent. David, the king of Israel, has unconspicuously left on record in the 38th Psalm a most graphic description of hereditary syphilis, experienced in his own person. Dr. Clarke says it is most likely that psalm was written in reference to some severe affliction that David had, and his illicit commerce with Bathsheba. Hey, I don't read the bloody Bible. Give me a break. But of what nature we are left to conjecture from the 3rd, 5th, and 7th verses. The psalm is dated not quite a year after the act alluded to, about the right time for the terrible symptoms David described to make their appearance. The term syphilis is from a Greek word signifying filthy. There is one unvarying sign of this disease, the existence of an ulcer or ulcers, usually upon the genital organs. The French call the ulcer a chancre, or, as we would pronounce it, canker. The common name is simply venereal sore or ulcer. A pimple first appears on the summit of the pustule forms. Then the rupture of the top of it brings to view the ulcer or sore. This ulcer is shallow, more or less circular or oval in form, bounded by a perpendicular or slightly jagged border, and furnished with a smooth yellow base, moistened by an unhealthy secretion. The skin around the sore is a little thickened and inflamed. This is a simple venereal ulcer. It generally lasts about 5 weeks, and then it heals. But it is not always thus simple. It may be an inflammatory canker attended to excessive inflammation. It may be what is called a sloughing canker, characterized by the perishing and falling off of large parts of flesh. It may be gangrenous or marked by a tendency to mortification. It may be phregendinic or eating, being distinguished by a rapid loss of substance or eating away of the flesh. Or finally, it may be underrated, being noted for the peculiar hardness of the base and of the flesh immediately around it. A venereal sore is the result of impure connection with a person having the syphilitic disease. The poisonous secretion of a sore, applied to the skin of a healthy person, produces inoculation, and a new sore upon the previously healthy person is the result. This canker appears in a few days after coition, a certain time being required for it to produce its effect, as in the application of vaccine matter to the arm. Okay. Bubo, at least that's how I think it's pronounced. The next symptom in the order of occurrence, which frequently follows the ulcer, is the bubo. It is named from a Greek word which means groin, from its usually appearing in that part. It is painfully swelling of the inguinal gland in the groin and is caused by the absorption of virus or poisonous matter from the canker. This gland is one of the lymphatics, class of vessels as numerous all over the symptom as the veins and arteries. They are likewise called absorbents. These that originate from the private parts absorb the poison from a venereal sore and convey it to the glands in the groin, which being poisoned by it inflame and swell. The bubo generally appears in from 1 to 2 weeks from the appearance of the ulcer. It is usually upon the same side which the canker occupies on the penis. When the bubo advances to suppuration and becomes an open sore, it is then a glandular canker. And I'll show you a picture of this in just a second, of how it appears on the skin, on the face. Vegetations. These are peculiar growths appearing upon different parts of the skin, which resemble certain vegetables. They are found most frequently in the male on the head of the penis and on the membrane lining the foreskin. In the female, they are found at the entrance to the vagina and not unfrequently in the vagina itself. They sometimes appear on the neck of the uterus. Primary disease. Thus far, the disease noticed are what are called primary. If properly treated and cured in season, the constitution is not infected, and no subsequent troubles appear, but results so fortunate as this is not common. Generally, the treatment is either too long delayed or is too brief and superficial. The poison is, in consequence, absorbed into circulation. The whole constitution becomes infected. The fluids and solids are so acted, and altered in fact, that a special constitution is created. For this reason, the affections of the skin, the mucous membranes, the bones, etc., which follow, are called constitutional. These constitutional diseases never appear immediately, as the result of an impure connection, but only after those affections already noticed. The primary diseases are local. The constitutional affections are general. The first thing which strikes the eye in these constitutional complaints is the colour and appearance they give the skin. It has a reddish coppery tinge and a peculiar dirty appearance. The order in which the several parts are affected are, first, the skin and mucous membranes, second, the hard substance surrounding the bones called periosteum, the tendons, and the bones themselves. Those affections which appear on the skin and mucous membrane are usually called secondary because they are the second to appear, while those affecting the bones, etc., are denominated hereditary because, in the order of appearance, they are the third class. Eruptions of the skin and ulcers. Of the constitutional eruptions, there's a great variety, so great that I cannot, in small space, give a minute description of them. The breast and arms are not infrequently the first to be affected. Attending these eruptions, there is a slight uneasiness and no pain, though there is sometimes a slight itching. The first breaking out is usually of the copper colour, somewhat paler than it subsequently is. The eruption is often in the form of blotches, elevated only a very little above the skin. They are composed of small pustules, with a little fluid in them, which soon dries away and the whole may be rubbed off like a bran. This may leave the skin looking tolerably sound, and inspire the belief that no further mischief is to be expected. No hope can be more delusive. Parts afflicted with this complaint show no tendency to heal. The first crop of pimples is soon followed by a second, which produces a thicker crust and yields a larger amount of bran. This rubbed off, small ulcers appear underneath. And just in case this wasn't scary enough for you, ladies and gents who care about their appearance, yes, that is what your skin could look like if you get syphilis. Now we don't want that, do we? Okay. Hold on. We're going to be talking about syphilis for a little while, it seems. Oh, the next one's exciting now. Let's keep going. Vascular eruptions. There is another syphilitic affection of the skin, which appears in the shape of vesicles, like smallpox. These dry and leave a scab. Scaly eruptions. There's still another affection, which is in the form of scales, and on one scale will be piled upon another. It begins with an eruption of copper-coloured blotches, which becomes covered with scales. These are succeeded by scabs, and when these fall off, shallow ulcers are left with copper-coloured edges. This is a stubborn form. Tubercular eruptions. In another variety of the disease, broad red copper-coloured tubercles, however you say it, or hard elevations appear, most commonly about the side of the nose or on the cheeks. Gradually, they separate and are succeeded by deep ulcers, terminating in scars. This is an unfavorable form of the disease, and usually appears some considerable time after the primary symptoms, in persons whose constitution has been shattered. This rather belongs to the hereditary form of the disease, and in addition to the above, patches of unhealthy inflammation are apt to form on the tongue and after a time break, disclosing ragged orange-coloured ulcers. Many other forms of eruption exist, but in a popular work like this, it would be useless to make the nice distinctions which their description would reprise. Some of the worst forms of the secondary affections are found upon the mucous membrane of the mouth and throat. These correspond in number and size with the affections of the skin. They affect the lips, the internal sides of the cheeks, the tongue, the tonsils, the pharynx, the soft palate, the nasal cavities, etc. They are terribly destructive in their effects, forming gaping ulcers and eating deeply into the parts. They often make shocking work in the whole mouth and throat. And why would those bloody carriages stop moving by? God bloody damn it. Where was I? And when attended with considerable inflammation, make it almost impossible to swallow anything, or even to open the mouth. I have often seen breaches through the palatine arch, and even the whole arch destroyed. Persons have often died from starvation, not being able to swallow. The ulcers sometimes take hold in the tonsils and dig them out as if they were done with a punch. The ulcerations often affect the mucous membranes of the genital organs. In the female, they often affect the vagina and the neck of the womb, and thus may exist for a long time, as the cause of whites without being suspected as such. They affect also the mucous lining of the fundament of the large bowel. They sometimes exist in the ear, and more often the eye. This latter affection passes under the name of syphilitic iritis. And there's a picture that got torn out of this book, so I'm not going to mention it. Although I just did, didn't I? Whatever. This disorder, having, by frightful ulcers, run riot upon the delicate structures of the skin and mucous membranes, advances boldly onwards, attacking the muscles, the tendons, and hard covering of the bones, and the solid bones themselves. No part of the human frame, not even the skeleton, can escape this devouring complaint. The bones of the nose and face are generally the first to be attacked. These perish slowly, falling away piece by piece, the nose in the meantime sinking down near to the level of the cheeks. From these parts, the disease may spread to the bones of the whole system. These affections of the bones are attended by pains of almost every kind and degree. These pains are sometimes fixed in one place, at other times wandering, the whole skeleton being painful. In these later cases, they seem to the sufferer to reach the very marrow. Sometimes, when the pain is fixed in one place, the feeling is such as might be supposed to be experienced if the bone were being bored. These pains are most terrible during the night. Upon those parts where the skin is near the bone, as the forehead or shin, syphilitic nodes or tumors often appear, which are hard, like cancerous tumors. Besides the above, there are the loss of the hair, alopecia, blindness, deafness, and various other mischiefs resulting from syphilis, which need not be described. Is the constitutional disease communicable? Many believe, even among those who are eminent in the profession, that the constitutional form of the disease are not communicable. A few years ago, indeed, this latter opinion was generally received. It is now quite extensively doubted or rather disbelieved. Facts are constantly occurring under the eye of unprejudiced physicians which make it very evident that the constitutional disease may be communicated from one person to another. 1 second. Okay, there we go. The disease hereditary. It is no small amount of suffering, bodily and mental, which the individuals enduring who contract this disease. But the inflictions visited upon them, severe as they are small compared to the aggregate of ills entailed by it upon the long line of their posterity. Whether it be a man or the woman whom the syphilitic virus has inoculated, if it be allowed to be absorbed so as to affect the constitution, will be very likely to be sent down to the children's children. The divine law which links the sins of the father with the sufferings of even the third or fourth generation is now more painfully illustrated than in the scouring descent. There are many generations of the terrible disease. Through many generations of the terrible disease. It may be passed down to posterity by either of the parents, but if both be diseased, the transmission will be more certain. If the mother be infected, she will infect the child while carrying it. If the father's constitution be poisoned, the child will receive the infection from him through the semen and will be likely, while in the womb, to infect the mother. I recollect but one author of note who has mentioned this mode of infection. I have myself seen 2 cases of it. Oh, look, a cat. Okay. This constitutional disease, whether it exist in the mother, or be communicated to the child, and thence to her by an infected father, is a frequent case of abortion. Throughout nature, blight is the result of a diseased parentage. Mature fruit is seldom obtained from the infected seed. Oh no. The cat just climbed into my desk. Uh-oh. Hopefully this doesn't cause a problem. Oh yes? You have a question? Is the constitutional disease curable? Well, no question connected with this complaint possesses a greater interest than this. None is pressed more earnestly upon the physician. In a certain sense, the disease is curable. Its outward manifestation may be wholly repressed. The health of the person suffering from it may be restored and become, in an important sense, good. But this cure is never brought about by nature. It may be and is often effected by medicine. I have never failed to effect such a cure in any case which has come under my treatment. Such results may properly, in general terms, be called cured. Yet there is a sense in which a cure never occurs. It is a well-attested fact that a system once thoroughly pervaded by the poison is never completely purged of it. It may be shorn of all its active malignancies, but as to intimately permeated the tissues and solid bones to be wholly expelled. Pursue it as we will with the remedial forces of our art, it still takes refuge in the most subtle processes of animal life, still infects the currents of being, and finds expression in the scrofula, in the lupus, and in the scaly affections of other generations. Dr. Aramis Wilson, the great authority in skin disease, says, I feel convinced that a considerable portion Sorry, the cat's scratching at my notes. Where was I? I feel convinced that a considerable portion of those diseases, which pass under the name of scrofula, are the produce of the syphilitic poison, are in fact not scrofulous but syphilitic. Astruc thought the same and suggested what is doubtfully true, that the transmission of syphilis must occur through several generations before it becomes scrofula. Bertram Camper, Storr, Portland, Huffland, and Albert have all advocated the same opinion. This is doubtless right, though there are many authorities on the other side. He must be a poor observer who cannot discover a probable filial relationship between scrofula to syphilis. A variety of facts admitted by the whole profession go far towards demonstrating this relationship. Scrofula is always hereditary. It is a disease of the parent, imparted of the offspring, but there is scarcely any disease so certainly sent down to posterity as syphilis. Oh, class. Looks like we're going to have to, continue this later. Well, the next disease later. If we even get that far. Yes, I actually think we should stop here for today. We will continue. Oh, breaking my book apparently. We will continue with this lesson later, next class. So, till next time, please find your books, and I hope to see you next class. Bye, children.